One of the issues that we have in cold chain is the temperature excursion, for example. You're transporting a high quality product, be it ice cream or be it pharmaceuticals, which is the part of the industry that I am in. But what you don't want is to design a really high quality product, to have all of your qualifications and your testing, lining up for the customer then to do their PQ shipments, their testing, to sign it off with their quality department. And then once it leaves the site, something breaks down.
Welcome to Chain Reaction, the podcast for the supply chain and logistics industry. If you enjoy this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Welcome back to the Chain Reaction podcast. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel. That it'll help us grow and reach a wider audience who will benefit from the experience and the ideas we explore here. As always, we're diving into the world of logistics and the forces that are shaping it. Today, my guest is Marloes Wanrooij, a senior supply chain executive with deep experience in supply chain operations, specifically in cold chains. One of the key themes we'll be exploring today is building and running temperature-controlled logistics.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Well, I'd like to begin our conversations with kind of a bit of a storytelling, if that's okay with you. So most people don't set out to work in logistics kind of consciously or by choice. Sometimes it is kind of an accident. So I'm curious how it began with you. What drew you into that field, and potentially kind of what has happened and how it happened?
So my story is not very different. It was completely by accident. Originally started in container leasing here in the Netherlands, where I'm currently based again after 12 years in the UK. And someone went on maternity leave. I was looking for a temp job, and here we are 16 years later. I started off in container leasing. I did that for a while in the Netherlands. Decided I wanted to make that move to the UK. Always been drawn to England for some reason, and found a job. Stayed there again. Container leasing, small company, which is where most people probably relate. In slightly smaller companies, the operations team will often be told, here is a bit of quality, here is a bit of health and safety, can you do that as well? And that's kind of how it grew from a small company to a cold chain, medium company, first in operations, now in quality, health and safety role.
Interesting. So I got sucked in and then blinked a couple of times, and before you know it, 16 years later, here we are talking about things. So interesting bit that we had a chat before the recording, and you mentioned is the intersection or the overlap between kind of the quality in operations and how one impact the other or support the other. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of quality? Sometimes has a bit of a bad name or bad reputation, or seem to be kind of a blocker. Yes, like it's something like a necessary evil, but it's not evil, is it? It is one of the most critical bits that any organization, especially that is involved with high quality, high value, high impact products like pharmaceuticals. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Quality is very often seen as the police, right? I'm here to tell you off when you do something wrong. But I think what's interesting is come from that operational background. I've seen the missed SLAs with suppliers. I've seen the on time and full deliveries not, being at the level that they should be. And then, did quality and health and safety to an extent as a bit of a side hustle before it became the permanent role. So I've got the insight into both parts of that conversation. I think the reason why quality has such a bad name is because people see quality as a blocker. And that happens when quality gets brought to the table when the problem has already happened. So when you bring in quality, once the problem's already there, and other departments or other people have not been able to resolve it, quality has to come in and say, all right, guys, stop it. Let's get back to the root of the problem. And then we're going to look for a way to fix it. Whereas, if quality is brought to the table from the start, so when you're doing your changes, when you're looking to see how your operation can be improved, how you can improve your profit by removing some of the waste that's in your processes, by looking at why are things going wrong and what can we do long term to fix them, then quality becomes less of a bad cop, but can be a driver for improvement at the start.
Yeah, no, it's music to my ears when you mentioned the word waste, and I think it's exactly that, as exactly as you said, is when the quality is being kind of quality controls and the things being brought in post factum. You already eroded customer trust. You undermine kind of potentially even the business models. I mean, it's most critical bits for pharmaceutical. That's where kind of in the pharmaceutical as one of the areas where this is critical. It's important. But I had a conversation kind of on the expo the other day. I mean, we're talking about cold chains, and a guy was very, very passionately talking about ice creams. And the point is, they have they make a very kind of the premium quality ice creams, and when they deliver, they say if like the top gets flattened and the customer is not happy, that's also quality. That's also part of the process that makes the whole thing is the whole thing sustainable in a sense of how can we make our operations effective so the customer is really getting the kind of the service levels or the product that they're expecting that are on the brochure and a picture. So can you talk maybe a little bit about specifics and the issues and the challenges in the cold chain environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just touching on what you just said about, the customer isn't happy, it becomes a quality job. I think what people fail to see very often is that what quality really is trying to do is improve your customer satisfaction. So you're looking at the customer complaints, you're looking at in cold chain, for example, your temperature excursions. Where do they come from? Why is this happening? And how can we make sure that the customer doesn't have the experience with something going wrong? And how can we prevent it rather than fix it afterwards? I mentioned it briefly. One of the issues that we have in cold chain is the temperature excursion. For example, you're transporting a high quality product, be it ice cream or be it pharmaceuticals, which is the part of the industry that I am in. But what you don't want is to design a really high quality product, to have all of your qualifications and your testing, lining up for the customer then to do their PQ shipments, their testing, to sign it off with their quality department. And then once it leaves the site, something breaks down. What you then want to do as quality is work with the operational teams and really work on those robust frameworks. How am I training these people? What's important? Is everyone learning at the same pace? Is everyone learning the same way? How can I be proactive about these things? Because you can have a really, really good, solid configuration, a very solid system. But if something goes wrong with the people that are preparing it, you can have a container that can maintain the temperature for 120 hours, but it could go wrong after an hour if something has not been done right by the people that are managing those processes.
Well, that's an interesting point that you brought up is, and I've seen that sort of being in my management consulting experience previously, is where companies and teams put in a lot of effort, as you said, in designing great product, kind of amazing quality, kind of perfect characteristics, and it does exactly what it's supposed to. And then the packaging is an afterthought. And then the transportation elements is even more of an afterthought driven by cost savings. And And that is where all that quality is actually gets deteriorated, damaged, and it's eventually impacts customer experience. So by the time they open up the packaging, they will see what's inside. Like, well, yeah, it's great, but it's not the right temperature. It's not. I mean, what happened to it? I didn't get what I expected. So organizationally, then what you're suggesting by the sound of what I'm hearing is that the quality not just need to be. It's not a design on the outset and then you guys go and do it. It needs to be embedded as part of the supply chain organization, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that quality alongside operations and the supply chain departments, I think they need to get a seat at the table from the start, because quality has the insight in the processes. They see where the customer complaints are coming from, but they can also manage changes. So if there are big organizational changes, if there are new products being onboarded, if there are new temperatures being brought on, for example, you want to have the quality department sitting there to put the sort of the risk hat on, see, okay, where is this potentially going to bottleneck and how can we prevent that proactively, rather than quality having to come out with their police whistle afterwards and tell everyone that they've done it wrong. Yeah, I think that is a good way to approach it.
In your experience, and this is interesting, kind of the thought occurred to me, because typically the quality control is, especially in the pharmaceutical business, very, very heavy at the production level, on the production sides, in production, but it's not necessarily trickled down into logistics. So do you see them, and do you see the challenges where they're either two separate teams and somebody's responsible for quality of logistics and outbound distribution, but there's somebody else is responsible for production, or it needs to be one and the same team that sees everything through and through from production essentially to the customer doorsteps?
That's a really good question. So I can only really speak to my own experience. So if I look at, so Tower Cold Chain is the company where I started in cold chain. They were acquired by Cold Chain Technologies. So that's the company I currently work for at the end of 2024. And what I did in my role as operations and now sort of do from the other direction in quality is, okay, we look at the requirements for the setup. So there is a network that we operate. There's over 20 global partners. So all third-party logistics companies that we train to act on behalf of the company to dispatch these high quality temperature controlled systems. Yes, there is absolutely quality oversight at production. There are quality reviews at manufacturing. The supply chain team does a really great job of auditing their suppliers, doing everything they can from a manufacturing, sustainability, human rights, everything. What we do when we hand over the product to the locations that need to dispatch them to the customer is we have a really, really robust, very thorough, and some people might say a bit too thorough, setup process for onboarding these suppliers, because we're not working with tower or cold chain technology locations. We work with established third-party logistics companies with established warehouses, drawing on their resources and training them to the procedures that we have. So you need to be very thorough. You have your checklist. You have, okay, do we have the contract? Do they know what to expect? What's the requirement? What do we need to add to the site? How many, refrigerated shipping containers for conditioning? And then once operations has done all that, then there is the quality sign off. Have we done everything? Do we have the training records? How have they been trained? Are they competent, etc.? So that's where you have that very close collaboration with quality and all the other departments, the supply chain, the operation, the product development. And I think that's a recipe for success, or at least that's how I've seen it.
Right. No, it's really interesting. And I think in my mind, from what you were saying, is essentially got three parts to it, or at least that's how I'm from an outside in, I'm looking at this. So one is, so it's a preparation and the methodologies, the types of controls, the strategies and the kit that needs to be built or designed to run the process. Then the process itself with whatever the technical supports, the flow, the sequence, the checklists, what you mentioned. And the last part is people who are actually going to do this, who's going to be diligent. So having said all that, in your experience, what are the typical problems? What are the typical issues that you run in running that you face in running either consistently or setting up a temperature controlled, resilient and effective logistic chains?
I think one of the biggest problems that we come across is complacency. So people have been doing something for years and they think, okay, well, I know how to do it. I don't need your additional training. I don't need your refreshers. Why are you bugging me? Let me do my job. And then we have to push through. I mean, we have a really good, we have a global hub trainer. We call our service centers hubs. We do proactive training, and sometimes people think, oh, why do you want to train me? I've been doing this for ages. But what we find is we have a reduction in customer complaints caused by, human error if we proactively touch base, especially because there are so many different variations to all the container systems that we can send out to customers. We want to make sure that the ones that they don't use very often still stay fresh in their mind. And then the second part is staff turnover. So we work with big warehouses. We have small teams that we train specifically to the processes. What happens when those people leave? Who trains the new staff? If it's your train the trainer person, who goes and does the retraining for the new people that have joined? And are there training records for that? Are they delivering that training, intensively, or is it an on the job? It might seem like a very little thing, but if you have, like I said, very solid systems, very highly engineered products, but you're struggling at the point where people have to prepare them. That's where a big challenge lies. And that's where you get your temperature excursions, your customer complaints.
You are listening to Chain Reaction. This podcast is brought to you by Phlox, the leading marketplace for the supply chain and logistics industry. Visit phlox.is to find out how you find the perfect supplier or make your services available to prospective buyers. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to the show.
Very interesting. And I have two thoughts on this. So I'll start with the first one. We did touch upon the word resilient. In your environment, in particular, resilient supply chains, what does that mean?
Oh, it can mean so many different things. I think resilient supply chains can do, they are, so they're robust and reliable, meaning even if something goes wrong, you have an alternative, you have a backup. I saw a post on LinkedIn earlier this week, and it said about a supply chain manager who brought on a second supplier for a core part of the product that company was manufacturing. And that is because they had spotted the issues very early on. They had seen that there were financial issues with the existing supplier. They had seen that there were some quality concerns. They had seen that there were some delays in delivering. And they onboarded a secondary supplier. And the reason why I thought that was so interesting is because a lot of people think, well, it's been going fine all this time. Why would we change it? Or why would we jeopardize a relationship with a sole supplier? But if you spot the warning signs early on, and if you have people that know what to look for, you can be proactive. And I think that'll probably be the key word that I'll be saying a lot more today, proactive. Because, people said, why do you want to change it? This is slightly more expensive. And then it turned out during the pandemic, this company was able to keep producing, keep manufacturing, even though their original supplier couldn't deliver the product, the secondary supplier could. And I think that is the key to having a resilient supply chain. First of all, you need a very strong operational team because there's always something that's going to go wrong. You need a very strong quality team so that they can work on that continuous improvement and be, that proactive voice. But you want to be prepared for when something goes wrong. And that's why you have your risk assessments and your risk registers and, your strategic meetings, etc. I think that is the key. So it's not just one function. It is a collaboration between all those key departments.
Right. So so the resilience is preparedness and having kind of all the other ducks of plan B, plan C, and so forth, kind of in the row ready, to go to be deployed if something goes wrong. But you touched on another point, which is the other thing that I wanted to bring up is, well, how you drive innovation at the same time. Because on one hand, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. On the other hand, actually, we need to continuously drive there are new materials being developed, there are new technologies being discovered, there are new approaches being built. So how do you drive innovation? Well, ideally, as any business wants to get a cost down and the service up and the quality of products up. So how do you manage kind of that challenge as well as the disruption challenge to your existing operations? So can you shed some light on that, please?
I can certainly try. I think so. We very briefly talked about waste. There's always going to be waste in your processes, especially if you don't change them, if you don't review them. I think the interesting thing about quality is we look at the root cause. So why is something not efficient? Why is something not working? What do we need to change? And I think the risk that every company has is, there are people in certain roles, they've been there a really long time, they do everything right, they know the product, they know the company, but there is always that risk of, we've always done it this way, so why would we change it, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think the second part to that is, okay, well, if we are going to change it, if we are going to fix it, how are we going to manage that change? Because change management, I think, is something that a lot of companies don't even give second thought to. You'd want to get your stakeholders on board. You want, people to be on board with the change, because if you're just changing something from the top down and you're saying, okay, essentially I'm doing this to you, you're going to get a lot of resistance, and you're going to get a lot of people, whether they've worked for the company for 20 years or for 2 months, they're going to say, well, hold on, where is my role to play in this? So I think change management is a really big factor to that. But bring on the people with the experience. Have a look at your processes. Where are your bottlenecks? Where do you have too many people doing one job and not enough people doing the other? What are your key touch points? And that's where your lean comes in. It's a very interesting take on where do we cross over? What's our time in motion study? Where do we lose the most time? So, there are probably 100 different answers to that question, but I'm going to stop at that one.
Well, you ventured a few ideas, and I think that those are very helpful. Absolutely. But one thing that waste is definitely kind of a concept or an enemy. Sort of windmill, so to speak, that we are trying to fight on a daily basis. That's where kind of the flocks and the marketplace that we build is exactly around that. Waste of time, effort, cost, capacity, and there's so much of it, and we can do so much better with what we have. So we've taken the technology angle at this and tried to do kind of the combination of logistics. So I wonder, the technology bit kind of in your space, what role does it play, and where do you see kind of it goes and evolves from where we are? I mean, people talk AI as if it is a panacea to everything. Well, the word panacea is actually very good for our discussion today. So how do you see that?
I personally really like working with AI. Not to write my emails for me, but I think it gives you a tool to review things in a way that you couldn't. There are ways to, have, AI do, a root analysis for you, a root cause analysis. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do the work yourself. You still have to do your investigation. You still have to speak to people, but it will draw connections. It will make the comparison. It will look at where, the trends are, for example, and then obviously you have to sense check it because it is still a machine and it doesn't know your systems. But I find that it gives you quite interesting insights sometimes. And I think it can be a really good tool to help with that. Now, it would be even more interesting, right? We have an electronic quality management system, in which we record audits and findings and complaints and root causes and CAPAs and everything like that. What would be really interesting is if you were to put AI into one of those systems and have it create almost like a live dashboard for you, or hey, have you thought about this? Or hey, this looks like it's going wrong quite regularly, right? This is where you should be looking to make some changes, and actually, hey, this is a suggestion that I have for you. So I think why AI is not going away. I know that there are people concerned about it, but I think it's here to stay. Why not use it?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool, and that's exactly what we try to use it for, or the way that we try to use it as well is exactly as you described. It's a helping tool. It can, if it's done right, it can take a completely different, unbiased view on what you're feeding it and give you a different perspective, give you the things that you may have overlooked based on, because this is what there was the couple of nice books that I read about. We all have biases. So there is an expert bias. There's one of those things. It's like, well, I'm an expert in that field and I know which issues to pick out of what areas that, and we're thinking in patterns, but the AI, if it is deployed correctly, it actually looked a bit more holistically like what else can go wrong. Yeah. It identifies interesting patterns. And I think what you mentioned is exactly the exciting bit. If you deploy this kind of system onto your electronic quality control, kind of the flow and the breadth of the data set, it might not just identify some patterns that either will be discounted or overlooked, but it may become preventative. Like, okay, well, it looks like this happens, after that happens. So in order to prevent this, look at this and look at that. So is that something that the business is looking into, or is that something that you are beginning to kind of develop in your workplace?
It's definitely something I am looking into. It's something that I've encouraged some people to do, especially people who might be very good at doing the investigating part, but maybe not so much the drawing conclusions part, or how to do that proper analysis. But I see it more and more, and I think it's absolutely brilliant for taking notes. I think it's wonderful that we can just have a conversation and no one has to take notes and then transcribe them later. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's saving a lot of time for people that could be spent on so much more valuable things. And I think in that sense, it's kind of reducing some waste from your business as well.
No, very, very, very interesting. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your perspective. One of the other things I wanted to ask on how to balance the different trade-offs when you look at let's say many engineers very keen to kind of build Rolls Royces out of whatever, so it's like over engineer things because they're so amazing, sometimes hiding behind the statements about quality, which make products extremely costly. You can have, I don't know, finance and accounting people are coming back in and say, well, we can't afford producing it or doing it that way. So the quality might get compromised or something gets sacrificed. So, and then obviously there is also kind of the compliance requirements, and there's a lot of that, I believe, in the pharmaceutical space. So there are many of those kind of trade-offs. So how do you find the right balance? How do you define the priorities and what can be kind of sacrificed, but what has to be protected?
Very good question. You're really making me think today.
I do my best.
I think this is where the voice of the customer and the voice of the industry that you work in really comes in. This is where you have your conversations with, your commercial teams, your marketing teams, the people that sit across from your customer. Because yes, absolutely, engineers can think up the most beautifully designed products, but if they cost 3 times more than what the customer is willing to pay for them, or they have a lot of, non-value add, or at least to the customer non-value add additions, the customer is not going to buy it. So this is where you need your industry, your feedback from that market that you operate in. What is important to them? Looking at your historic data. So again, this is where your kind of analysis comes in, where you're using your data. What's gone wrong? what needs to be fixed, because the engineering department is where you have your, well, if it is broken, then how do we fix it? And I think that's the trade-off that you need to make. Yes, we want to improve the product. We want to make it lighter. We want to make it last longer. We want to have more opportunities, more different options for customers to choose from. But there's no point in offering a customer a selection or a choice if they're not going to want to take it, right? You can say to someone, hey, here is a Marmite flavored ice cream. That's not going to be for everyone. There's going to be a very small part of your customer base that's going to be interested in that. So I think, you need to find that flavor that works for everyone. And then that is where your team should be putting their focus and all their creativity.
Great. Thank you, Marloes, for sharing your perspective. But before we wrap up, I'd like to return to something that you touched earlier about some daily pressures and that are facing logistics professionals, especially in cold chains. And if, let's say, if you had a magic wand and could remove one kind of persistent problem in your sector, in your job, which one would you choose?
I think the biggest challenge is change. And that is changing procedures, changing products, changing locations, integrating new businesses, old businesses. I think if I had a magic wand, I would really point it at the way that companies manage change. And I see a lot of great improvements being made with that. I see, people really coming on board and embracing that. There is a discussion to be had. There is a review of what the impact is going to be that's going on. But change is inevitable. Companies change, people change, processes change, regardless of what the origin is of that change. I think we need to just embrace it. And I think that would be my key. That would be my wish for today. And it might be different tomorrow, but today it's embracing change and managing change properly.
No, perfect. Can I be with you with that when you're gonna wave that magic wand so I can get some of that? I think change is a massive challenge in what we are trying to do as well. So we're trying to change the way that people work. We try to get away from Excel spreadsheets that are at the moment just effectively running so many supply chains into slightly more kind of evolved and a setup that allows for better resilience. And we talked about that. Resilience, sustainability, agility, all of those wonderful things. But very often supply chain is one of those kind of conservative industries that doesn't, or is reluctant or quite difficult to bring change about. So I'm 100% with you on that one. Well, thank you very much, Marloes. You've been amazing guest, and we had amazing discussion. Thank you for your insights.
No, thank you so much for having me, Michael. It was very fun to be on your podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to Chain Reaction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have a story or insights to share from your sector, we'd love to hear from you. Simply reach out to us through the links in the description. See you next time.